Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast, episode 55. I am your host, Brent Stewart McGee. My co-hosts today are...
I'm Joshua.
And I'm Chandler.
And today we are talking about the Xanthos, a 100-ton quad battlemech, the first of the quad series of battlemechs, or not series, the first of the quad category of battlemechs. Yeah,
the paradigm.
Divergent design, and it is neat, and we will talk about what makes a quad-mech as the episode goes on. So, the Xanthos, and really all quad-mechs, are the product of one man's vision, Dr. David Harrison. Dr. Harrison was hired by Hollis Industries to help push the company into the battlemech marketplace. Having delivered on the catapult, the Wunderkind was given massive resources and operational freedom to pursue projects. His vision would be formed into the Xanthos, the first quad-mech. The doctor believed that the four-leg design would increase stability and create a unique and powerful design. The Xanthos was restricted to proven and outdated technology for its proof of concept, and as the catapult contract ended with the Terran hegemony, Hollis pushed the Xanthos as their next big model.
That's a good spot to point out that even though he's a Wunderkind, Dr. Harrison wasn't just given carte blanche to build the Xanthos straight out of the gate. He was the guy who basically developed the catapult first, and it was that success that allowed Hollis to give Harrison free rein to try something revolutionary.
Kind of like the old Hollywood style of, you make a big blockbuster for us, you get to make a film auteur movie for yourself.
Yep.
This was a mistake, as even Dr. Hollis would object that several issues still indeed needed to be resolved, notably the stability and mobility over broken terrain. So it is unsurprising that the Xanthos was rejected. Despite this, Hollis had invested heavily and suffered from the sunk cost fallacy, adding to their financial issues. Later on, after Dr. David Harrison had moved on to Brigadier Corporation and would refine his concept into a viable design with the Scorpion and the Goliath. Hollis would learn from these new quad-mechs what they needed to improve the Xanthos and make it viable. Its history and bad word of mouth hampered the sales, and so by the end of the Second Succession War, it was effectively extinct. But like a phoenix, it would rise from the ashes and fire of the Jihad, having its redevelopment spearheaded by both Hollis and Norse Storm. It has the design quirks of having improved life support. So the first model we have today is the XNT-20. This guy's got a movement profile of 3.5. It has a small laser in the head, an AC-10 in the right torso, a medium laser in the right torso, a large laser in the left torso, a medium laser in the left torso, a small laser rear-facing in the left torso, and a SRM-4 in the left torso.
For a 100-ton assault mech, an AC-10, a large laser, and a smattering of secondary weapons does not feel very potent.
No. And when you add on top of it, it has a primitive fusion engine, and it has a primitive cockpit, and
primitive armor.
Yes, that was the other one. It's very lackluster. But again, this is a proof of concept that he had to make with the limited resources or proven technology from the primitive era. And it does work. I mean, it's not great, but as a proof of concept, is this any worse off than, say, the Mackie?
The Mackie's a bit more survivable, the original, the 5S, but the Xanthos wins out in just raw firepower. Like, the first Mackie just has the PPC, AC-5, and large laser. Well, this thing's got the large laser, and it upgrades the AC-5 to an AC-10, and then spreads that PPC out into a bunch of different weapons. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Mackie's going to be able to hand it just because of the armor.
Which is totally fair. I'm just making the comparison that they're both the first of a specific type of design of mechs, and they're also using primitive technology, so comparing them is not, I feel, a unfair thing to do.
Yeah.
I find the use of primitive tech on this essentially retcon of the Xanthos to be a questionable decision, because we're already well out of the period where primitive tech is standard. So why would you make a mech in an era when standard tech is standard and give it primitive tech?
Yeah, to put that into perspective, we're over a century from the Mackey's, introduction at this point.
It almost feels like the game developers are like, we need a reason for this thing to be bad, so we can call it a bad first prototype. So let's use primitive equipment to drive up the weight.
As a handwave fluff, lore reason, that's not terrible. I think they lampshade it decently. It's not great. It is a little ham-fisted, but I've seen worse things in multiple different properties, so...
It should be mentioned that in addition to the improved life support quirk, the 2.0 has protected actuators, bad reputation inner sphere, obsolete, poor performance, prototype, and unbalanced. So this thing's got the kitchen sink of quirks.
And it does also have 18 single heat sinks to deal with all of that heat from the weapons and everything, so it's gonna cook pretty quick if you're opening up with everything. But given how the quirks and how Quad-Mechs move, you're generally not going to be opening up with everything unless you're in a real bad spot.
You just bracket fire. Once you get into range of all your other weapons, you kind of just stop using the large laser because you get more firepower out of the 2 medium lasers and the AC-10.
Yeah, and when we get into the next model, the standard production model, this primitive feels even lazier to me because they basically just bumped everything down a bracket. The AC-10 was bumped down from a 20. The large lasers bumped down from a PPC. The SRM-4 was bumped down from an SRM-6. It's not even a different weapons loadout.
It's just kind of watered down.
Yeah.
Well, the 20 was seen in 2564, and it has a battle value of 1300 flat and a point value of 35. The 3.0 was seen in 2579, and as we just mentioned, it has a medium laser in the head, it has an AC-20 and a medium laser in the right torso, it has a PPC medium laser, an SRM-6, and a rear-facing small laser in the left torso. It also has 23 heat sinks, and it definitely has a little bit more armor considering it is now using standard tech across the board. So definitely more survivable, and I'm going to echo what Josh said, the weapon system just looks like what it should be now.
All right, listener, take note. When he says a little more armor, he means over double the amount of armor. We went from 160 points to 323 points.
From 15 tons of primitive to 20.5 tons of standard armor.
Look, when I make myself a plate of pasta and I grate the Parmesan cheese, there is a giant mound of Parmesan cheese on top of my pasta. What do you want from me?
Is that how you rearmor your mech?
It has 3 tons of ammo for the AC-20, so 15 turns of firing.
Which lines up quite nicely with the SRM that also has 15 turns.
Yep. That's more than adequate for most tabletop games. I think this 3.0, it's about right for an assault battle mech.
Especially of its era.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not thrilled about it. The standard art in the 3075 TRO isn't quite as cool as the primitive art in XTRO Primitives 4.
The Primitives art I do like. It definitely has a little bit more personality and pops off the page, but the standard art is not bad.
The standard art is much more reminiscent of the Star Wars ATTE from the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I didn't actually know that. I was gonna say, I recall this looking like something I saw in either the prequel Star Wars trilogies or I think an episode of Clone Wars I caught, so...
Yeah, that's in both.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting about the standard Xanthos art is right underneath the hip actuator on each leg, it almost looks like the legs can rotate out. It looks like there's a joint there that lets them rotate to be able to maneuver better, which is interesting.
That is pretty sweet.
If that's actually what's possible.
It's not even an actual joint. It's straight up a 360 degree spin there.
Yeah, if it's not just reinforcing armor.
I mean, can't Quad-Mechs kind of sidestep, so maybe that's how this does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can crab.
Yes, the lateral move. And of course, we'll cover those in the data dive for this episode when we talk about the quirks and how quad-mechs move, because to try and go into that while we talk about a mech, I think would be a little, it would be a little overloading to start the episode.
Yeah, I just thought it would be an interesting thing to point out.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, this guy has a movement profile of 3-5 as well. Sorry, Chandler, you were saying?
One last interesting thing about the Xanthos design on all of them, even the Dark Age Clicks Mini, is the weapons are on a rotating axis, so it can actually fire at targets above it, or technically below it, I guess, if it really wanted to, which is nice, because sometimes, these mechs can't tilt themselves in certain ways, and so it's good that the designers gave it the ability to fire at mechs higher than it.
Or even VTOLs.
So yeah, it looks like it has elevation changeability, but I'm not really seeing any ability to shift on a horizontal axis, from side to side.
Yeah, no, they can't horizontally, which lines up well with the way Quad-Mech rules go.
Mm-hmm. So the 3-0 has a battle value of 1948 and a point value of 53. Next up, we have the 4-0, seen quite a bit later in 3068 when... Well, in general, quad-mechs have a resurgence in that era because the tech level got to the point where they became much more viable when no longer are assaults. So, yeah.
Yeah, 3060 and after you see a resurgence, and we'll talk about that when we get to our data dive for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Quads never really go away, though.
Yeah,
they don't go away, but they're never predominant until they get a resurgence, or they become much more present, I should say.
Well, I'm just remembering in the Fourth Succession War, you did a data dive on him, Chandler.
The Goliaths.
The Goliath mech regiment or mech company. It's all Goliath mechs.
Yeah, and I think that just has to do with 3060 is when you see a lot of the newer quad mechs come out, but really it starts with all the memory cores that get recovered, which is prior to the Fourth Succession.
It takes a little time to figure it all out, build it all back up, retool some factories, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the 4-0 has a movement profile of 353, gets jump jets, which is pretty cool. It has a weapon systems loadout of a ER medium laser in the head, a heavy PPC in the center torso, a ER medium laser and a light PPC in the right torso, ER medium laser, a ER small laser rear facing, a Guardian ECM suite, and a light PPC in the left torso. It also has 15 double heat sinks.
Did you mention it has stealth armor?
And this thing is using a compact fusion engine.
Compact fusion, and then also has a heavy-duty gyro. So this thing has all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, this is a sports model.
Yeah, very compelling. I like it. I'm sad the 20's gone, but I don't mind it because it's shifted its focus to being a sniper, and that stealth armor helps a lot.
And I mean, really, with the heavy PPC, you're only losing 5 points of damage, and you're gaining a little bit of range.
Yeah, this thing...
A lot of range over an AC-20.
If you're not facing it, you need to close with this thing to kill it, because if you're trying to shoot at it from range with the amount of armor it has, because it still has 323 points of stealth armor, and if stealth armor's on, you're never killing us. It's just going to sit there and beat the crap out of you with that heavy PPC.
Yep.
Well, and for Alpha Strike, this guy's got 11 points of armor and 10 points of structure. This is a beefcake.
It's a beef house, brick house.
And yeah, it's a brick house.
Yeah.
I have the most hilarious mental image of how this thing looks when it's jumping. Just flame coming out of the underside and those 4 legs kind of flailing down like a squid out of water.
I kind of figured it would do the Iron Man thing where there's like a little jet in each foot.
No, it's jump jets are in the center, left, and right torsos.
Well, that destroys my headcanon then.
Yeah, no, this is a rocket squid when it jumps.
So this guy's got a battle value of 2548 and a point value of 57. We come to the 5-0 in 3076, and this guy has a movement profile of 355, so it's got those improved jump jets now.
Yes.
It's got a medium pulse laser in the head, an ER PPC, and a ER small laser rear facing in the center torso. 2 medium pulse lasers in both the right torso and the left torso. And then it has 12 double heat sinks. And to help pay for all that weight, it's got light ferro, endo steel, a compact gyro, and a compact engine.
Those last two are actually driving up the weight.
Well, yes, but your critical slot balancing, shifting all the things so that it is balanced is what I mean to say.
Yeah, that's how they fit that ERPPC in the center torso, and the small laser is they get the compact gyro and compact engine.
Mm-hmm.
I want to like this guy because it's still super tanky. 19.5 tons of light ferro gives it the exact same armor points as the previous models. It's got decent firepower, well, decent for a 30-25 heavy, with 2 overheat in Alpha Strike, but it's 2 overheat, and it doesn't really feel like it's got enough heavy guns for an assault mech.
Yeah, the Xanthos 5.0 feels to me like they had a bunch of Xanthos laying, like, what the hell are we gonna do with this thing? And so they decided to task it with chasing down scout or like light harassers that are messing with other assault mechs with that 5 jump. You know, you got some Locust shooting some Atlas that can't quite get him, and all of a sudden the Xanthos jumps over the hill with 4 medium pulse lasers and just wipes it off the field and then just jumps away. And everyone's just like, what the hell happened? Because you had a 100-ton mech jump 5A.
See, to me, this weapons loadout system, it feels like it wants to get nice and close, but it doesn't have the movement to get nice and close. So it wants to feel, to me, it wants to be on a defensive action or a garrison, and then having those improved jump jets giving it that 5 movement allows it to possibly skirt around heavy fortifications and harass, and this is what it speaks to me that it wants to do, at least.
I picture this in a Soviet-style Stalingrad or Siege of Berlin type situation, where it's trundling through the streets as a mobile building, infantry clustered around it, everything's engaging at point-blank range. And then, you know, if something's on the next street over, it just kicks in those 5 improved jump jets and flies over the intersecting buildings and drops on top of the enemy column coming up another street.
Yeah. Perish the thought for some poor light mech this thing decides to death from above.
Oof.
You've heard of a Highlander burial.
Belly flop.
There is not a light mech left. Welcome to Xanthos burial.
Yeah.
It's like the WWE of mechs.
The Xanthos from the top of the ring.
So this guy's got a battle value of 2146 and a point value of 50. We then come to the 6-0 in 3094. And this guy has a movement profile of 3.5, so loses that jump jet capability, but I think it adds some weapons, so I think it's a pretty fair trade-off. It's got 2 ER medium lasers in the center torso, LRM 10 in the center torso, and 2 small pulse lasers in the center torso. It's got an ER medium laser, a Guardian ECM, and a PPC in the right torso, and then it has an ER medium laser and a PPC in the left torso. It's got 15 double heat sinks, keeps that compact engine and gyro, and has stealth armor as well.
This guy feels like a straight upgrade to the 4.0. Your light PPCs have become real PPCs. You lose the heavy PPC, but you get that LRM 10 now, so you got some HE damage. Yeah. I kind of like this guy.
Yeah, and it's also got a coolant pod. It's got a coolant pod for when you just really need something dead, you can alpha strike and not blow up.
Oh yeah, it does have a coolant pod.
Yeah, 1 coolant pod. Just remember to use it before it gets shot or it blows up. All in all, a good sniper juggernaut. You know,
right torso.
Right torso.
I'm surprised that doesn't make it experimental. I guess coolant pods are no longer experimental by the Dark Ages.
Yeah, in Megamech it's still listed as experimental, but that's because Megamech hasn't updated that stuff, or they just haven't, their system hasn't been able to do any of the upgrades. I don't quite understand how Megamech handles experimental and advanced tech and the differences between ages. So.
Well, this guy's got a battle value of 2300 even and a point value of 58. We then come to our last model.
No. Master Unit list is 2300.
Guess I have to get on the horn with Megamech. They have it at 2320.
Huh, interesting.
The more you know.
So the last model we have for this episode is the 7-0, and it comes out in 3119, and this guy has a movement profile of 4-6, so getting a little quicker, that's nice to see. It's got 2 ER medium lasers clan in the right torso, as well as a Gauss rifle in the right torso, and the same in the left torso. It's got 3 tons of ammo in the center torso, so you're looking at 12 shots with both, which will cover you in pretty much basically any Mega Mech game, but yeah. And it's got 11 double heat sinks to help with your heat with those ER medium lasers, and it has an XL engine and compact gyro.
It's also got case 2. It's got case 2 for each of those Gauss rifles.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth pointing out that the medium lasers and possibly the Gauss rifles are clan tech.
They're also clan.
Yes.
And the armor, chassis, XL engine, yeah, everything else is inner sphere, which is really crazy to me because it's cheaper. Somehow it is cheaper in Alpha Strike than the Xanthos 6.0, but it is way more firepower.
My guess is the XL.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You go from 10 structure on the other Xanthos models to 4 structure.
Oof.
Due to the XL. But still, you go from 3 damage to 6 damage, or 3 with overheat 2 to 6 damage flat.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep the 11 tons of armor.
Which is a good jump.
But this Xanthos doesn't jump.
It does run slightly faster.
So this thing is neat, and I like it, but it seems very niche.
Overall, I'm unimpressed.
I want to put an AC-20 on it. Can I put an AC-20 on it? Is that allowed?
I mean, you have the 3.0 already has an AC-20.
Yeah, but this one, I could put an Ultra 20 on it. I could put an Ultra 20. It weighs the same amount as a Gauss rifle.
You could put 2 Ultra 20s.
Oh.
So overall, I'm pretty unimpressed with the Xanthos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see what it does as a Quad-Mech that you can't do with, say, an Atlas or a Highlander or any other 90 to 100 ton assault mech.
Not fall over.
Yeah, like it doesn't really sell itself as a proof of concept.
I mean, if you want to talk insane, if you want to talk crazy Quad-Mechs, let's talk Grand Turtle.
Yeah.
But the thing that... So I'm unimpressed. The thing that bothers me about it, though, is the O in the title, or in the classifier. They're all O's. To me, this should make the Xanthos an Omni.
But I mean, at least it keeps numerical order.
That is a plus, but O stands for Omni in most inner sphere nomenclature.
This is true, but this nomenclature did start before the Omni technology was invented, so
Fair.
Yeah, and I think the O is supposed to be an extension of the rest of the numeral letters, just because Xanthos. So you got XNTO.
Mm-hmm.
I would have put an S at the end, because then you get the abbreviation of the actual name.
Yeah,
but that's just being nitpicky.
You compare the Xanthos to the Great Turtle. Sorry, I said Grand Turtle earlier. It's the Great Turtle. And you're talking similar firepower for Alpha Strike, but the Great Turtle 1 has twice as much armor, 22 points of armor. So, I'm just not impressed.
This last model has a battle value of 2620 and a point value of 53. Really showing a difference in those two systems, because it's got 320 difference in points in classic Battletech and in the Plus, and -5 in the Alpha Strike. So interesting.
Yeah, which is interesting, because looking at like the 7.0 versus the Grand Turtle 1 or Great Turtle 1, the Great Turtle 1 has like no weapons in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has double armor, so that's a thing.
Yeah, and I think the difference you're seeing between Alpha Strike and classic Battletech there really boils down to the Gauss rifles and the XL engine.
Mm-hmm.
You pay more for survivability from the engine in Alpha Strike than you do for the increased firepower of the Gauss rifles in Classic.
Yeah.
So, for our pilot profiles today, our first pilot is retired Colonel Edward N. Smith. Edward served with the Highlanders for many years before retiring to live out his golden years with his wife, and accompanied her to Canopus 4 for medical treatment. This is the reason he was not on Northwind when the Jihad kicked off. Separating him from his home planet, he joined Devlin Stone's forces to liberate Northwind. He would often be the anchor of his lance, drawing fire and attention as his lancemates moved into position to eliminate the enemy.
There's a bit of controversy with that Blakist blockade, as I recall.
How so? If you refresh my memory.
Besides the words of Blake doing something.
If I remember correctly, there are a bunch of people who feel that the Northwind Highlanders could have fought their way off the planet successfully, because the Word of Blake blockade was more of a propaganda effort than it was a significant military threat. I don't know how true it is, because one, it's my memory, it might be faulty, and two, this is an in-universe, third-person limited type thing where, well, yes, we'd heard the Word of Blake presence was actually really light, and the Northwind Highlanders probably could have beaten them. So the fact that they just stayed huddled up on their planet and kept it out of the fighting, because Northwind didn't get damaged that badly during the Jihad.
No, they got bottled up.
Yeah, they let themselves be bottled up instead of coming out and helping everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So
I had not heard that take.
No idea how accurate that take is, but that is one line of thought that's out there post-Jihad.
So our next pilot is Xiao Sao Jia Fonier, and is a skilled Quad-Mech pilot with hauntingly green eyes. Jia was part of Operation Sovereign Justice and had her Goliath shot out from her during the action that got her promoted. After the operation, she was requisitioned a new Xanthos. She has engaged Blakist forces multiple times, and the resilience of her machine is likely what allows her to return after each mission.
Yeah, I can imagine those poor Blake pilots are like, come on, just die, you son. And then, the mech just doesn't die. Because those Xanthos, the compact engine, everything just don't die.
It is a very robust machine. All of our complaints about the weapon systems notwithstanding, the armor is almost always top-notch.
Yeah, once you get past the 2.0, it's always full.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing it really has going for it, which I think is kind of my problem. I need you to do more than just soak up damage.
Hey man, everyone needs a bullet sponge.
You need to be more proactive as an anvil.
Why do you think I let the paladin play in D&D? I need someone to take the arrow hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you look at it on the field of battle, it's slow compared to other mechs.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have a whole lot of firepower. The ones that have PPCs, those ones you actually have to consider a threat because they can reach out and touch you. But the shorter ranged ones, like the AC-20 variant, sorry Chandler, just go around it. It can't catch you.
Mm-hmm.
It can't hit you. Just go around it and kill everything else and then call in artillery on it when you're done.
And that's why you work as a lance and not let anyone, die by themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's why you don't see a lot of Quad-Mech pilots in Solaris. So, for our Battletech talk today, we're going to continue to talk about the Hour of the Wolf. And we're going to go up right to about when the Jade Falcons jump in system. So, I guess, spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning. Spoiler. Craig, get that on repeat. Spoiler warning.
Yes, sir. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning, the bird people are at Terra.
So once we actually land on Terra and get to see some action, and instead of just naval battles, which admittedly are awesome, and we talked about last episode, and we get to see some more of that later in the book as well, we get to see some pretty cool characters. The ones that I am particularly fond of is Hawkins and Jordan, or how do you pronounce?
Yeah.
I'm not French.
Close enough. Yeah. Hey, hold on. You're Canadian.
Yes. I grew up on the West Coast. We don't speak French there. They try to teach it to us, so most of us go, yeah, no, sorry.
No, sorry, eh? Sorry, that was insensitive and mean.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're easily, hands down, the best characters in the book.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
Reading some of Blaine's other books, I think he really shines with his side characters.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that he does a bad job with his primary characters,
mm-hmm.
but I think the side characters, I don't know if he consciously puts more effort, or not like more effort, but like puts more love and just like lavishes them with great personalities and everything, because he knows he doesn't have to worry about having to write these guys every time. He can be like, yeah, I can just make these guys dead-end characters and not have to worry about them, but they can be cool dead-end characters. units.
See, I think it's like that, but a little different. I think he's allowed to really go nuts with the side characters because they are less likely to be handed off to someone else. So he can really make them his own, you know?
Yeah, and that makes sense too. Like you have to stay within the bounds of who Alaric is to write Alaric. Whereas do Jordan and Hawkins, you can make them whoever you want.
And he made them great.
Yes.
So there are a couple of tanker pilots. One's a driver, one's a turret gunner. They show up periodically throughout the book and are always just a fun time to read about on the page. And I mean, honestly, they bicker like an old married couple, so it's hilarious.
And I have to say, I love the fact that there are non-mech heroes in these books. Like, I know BattleTech is the Battlemech setting, is the mecha game, but you know, militaries need more than just a bunch of glory hounds in oversized tin cans.
Oh, absolutely.
They need real soldiers too.
Yeah.
And I think some of the best stories actually have other characters besides mech warriors. It really makes them shine. Like any time we spend with the clans or anybody who has elementals, I always love seeing the elementals interact both on and off the battlefield with the mech warriors because it's always interesting.
Yeah, especially in the Blood of Kerensky trilogy. But that is off topic. And I mean, even during the space battle, the couple of times you see the elementals, you're like, these guys are having a blast. I mean, as much of a blast as you can have as you're, you know, being chucked down an airlock, but blast.
Adrenaline's a heck of a drug.
Yeah. I do find it hilarious they landed in Australia.
Yeah.
Australia, of all places.
It just means that Alaric has spent a lot of time playing Risk.
That is the joke.
Yep.
I wonder if he actually finished the game, or if he just, you know, took Australia and then was like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay here.
But the landing was cool. I liked reading Devlin Stone, his little meetings where he's just like, what do you mean you're not attacking the capital? What do you mean you're not bidding? You know, just I have this master plan, and then it is, no, I'm not playing your game. So
obviously Devlin Stone hasn't played enough Risk.
Yeah.
Or any other war game, because there's nothing gets beat out of you faster when you're playing war games than expecting your opponent to do exactly what you want them to do.
It's true.
Yeah.
But we do get to see his plans sort of come to fruition when the Jade Falcons actually make planetfall, and they fall into the classic clan trap of throwing everything into a meat grinder. But that is for a future podcast.
I forget, how far did Wolf get before Jade Falcon showed up?
Sorry, what was that?
They got to the mainland before Jade Falcon showed up, right?
Yes, if memory serves, they hit Australia, secured it, and were making their way up to China and Russia, and then to head to North America, and were heading across the Middle East, is when Jade Falcon showed up in system, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, Alaric invaded Asia with a land army and didn't lose.
He did the impossible.
That said, he didn't invade it from the European side.
That's true.
That's important.
He invaded it from the Pacific.
This is true.
No one's tried that yet.
Yeah, just coming up from the south, walking along the coast.
Japan.
Oh, when we get a chance to talk about Japan, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I want a short story about Japan.
100%.
Because all you get is snippets.
So it blows my mind. And I get that modern warfare is all about military capitalism, right? You have battlemechs are the ultimate example of capital in warfare. One guy able to do the job of dozens. But still, when you had a global war, World War II, the Germans had over 9 million men under arms at the end of the war. I'm pretty sure Clan Wolf doesn't have 9 million warriors to throw at Earth.
No, but they do mention that they make it pretty explicitly clear that it's like no guerrilla activity will be tolerated, but they do make a point of treating the pacified areas quite well. So there's that.
Well, we know they don't have 9 million mech pilots, but we don't know how much infantry or support elements they have. They could very well have 9 million men in infantry and like second line Salama units that are in like tanks and stuff that we just don't, hear about.
It's true.
because all they're doing is, filling the gaps and being used as cannon fodder.
Do you really get that sense of scale from it, though?
No, and I mean, even with the space battle, you don't.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, but that's just because I'm going to pull an example from further in the book when the wolves are fighting the falcons and a pilot punches out and they are picked up by some infantry that is patrolling around because the falcon infantry is patrolling around and capping any punched out mech warriors they can find. So I think they are there. I just think they are unsung mortar that holds all of the forces together. And I mean, logically, they'd kind of have to be.
Yeah, I've never got a real sense for how big a clan is, especially its Toman or Tumain or however you say that.
Tuman.
Toman?
I've always pronounced it Tumen.
Tumen? I like
Yeah.
that. We'll go with that.
Truman?
So yeah, I don't really have an idea of how big are these guys,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that usually when we see them fight, they're in trials where they've bid down to 5 mechs or 2 mechs and a point of elementals or something.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that all the writing of the clans has had an issue with, where you never see support elements. It's always mechs and elementals, and very rarely tanks. Whereas with the Inner Sphere, there's almost always some, Joe Schmo infantry squad number 205 that gets smoked.
Yeah.
Because, they were there with their little support PPC doing the good fight, and then they get, blown by some mech that got pissed off.
Or some assault mech walks up and just yeets them across the battlefield.
Yeah, Atlas with TSM goes yeet.
Pleasant.
Yeah, so Clan Wolf has landed, and they are expanding across the terrain of Terra, taking things slow and methodically. I really like how they made a point of being like, okay, we hit one of those redoubts, and we're just going to pick away at it, grind it down. We're going to be strategic, which is what you would need to do in that situation.
Yeah.
Can't you just bypass it?
Yes and no, because the redoubts are designed to be able to be not supplied for a long period of time. So if you just bypass them and take your frontline forces elsewhere, they'll be able to come out and harass what supplies you have in the area.
They're basically mini Castle Bryans.
Yeah, just more defensible and less Brian.
Yeah. A lot of pop-up turrets underneath streets and things like that.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things where I'm not sure how much I buy it, because during World War II, the whole military strategy was, the Japanese built these massive island fortifications. That's cool. We're going to ignore them and just sail on by. And they did that at a number of locations on planetary and groundside battles as well, where it's just, you've got this massive force. We're just going to bottle it up with secondary forces and then keep on going and just ignore it.
I think part of the problem with Wolf trying to do that is they don't have secondary forces at this point. Everything is practically frontline. They've put everything on the front, or the things they haven't put on the front, they're saving for the very end. They essentially just artillery bombard these redoubts until they're broken.
So I guess that would be an answer to my question of, do they have 9 million men? No, they really don't. So they have to take their time to reduce these fortifications because they don't have the bodies to just surround them.
And also, in internal monologues, you get the feeling that the leadership of Clan Wolf is very much like, if people die, I can't replace this warrior. I have extra mechs. I have extra equipment. I can repair stuff. But I do not have any more warriors to fill out this unit.
Yeah, and once they get off of Australia, they bypass a lot of the redoubts, or they bottom up in such a way where they're not an issue. But I think they use Australia as a very large supply base, so they have to pulverize that redoubt because it's a threat to their supply base.
Well, not only do they use it as a supply base, but they effectively take over, I think it's an armor works and a munitions factory, and set about retooling it to supply their standard of equipment, and they're the equivalent of showing up with boats full of supplies to build a castle.
Yeah, but yeah, once they get past Australia, it becomes much more of a normal clan, or what you would think is a blitzkrieg, where they're bypassing strong points and surrounding units and pulverizing them, or they're surrendering.
Are they so much bypassing them, or just having a wave wash over them, and certain units are sticking around and keeping the pressure on until it finally collapses?
A little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, some points it's like, oh yeah, we cut off this peninsula, but there's still like a crack unit who's fallen back into the jungle who's still harassing us.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where there's units that are still in the wind. It's not like it's a iron curtain that is just moving across the landscape and everything behind it is controlled by Clan Wolf.
I mean, that's the definition of bypass, is you're just leaving some guys there to mop up and keep the pressure on so that they can't break out and do their own thing. So
fair enough. Yeah, it's a great read and very enjoyable, and it's neat to see Devlin Stone go like, no, this isn't working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, old man Stone slowly falling apart because cryostasis apparently isn't good for you.
Yeah, they haven't worked all the kinks out of that one yet, apparently.
Will they ever?
Will they ever?
Well, we'll know when Walt Disney shows back up.
This just in, the Word of Blake actually did it. The Word of Blake actually cryostasis all those missing units.
They cryostasis the master.
Nah, he got nuclear fired. The Regulans took care of that.
That's good.
They gave him a taste of his own medicine.
So for our data dive today, we are going to talk about the minutiae of Quad-Mechs, because of course this is the first Quad-Mech we are covering, and it has not a different rule set, but it has some asterisks attached to it. Is that a fair way to categorize it?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. So I guess I'll start off with a nice little lore overview of Quad-Mechs throughout the ages.
Sounds good.
Did you want me to start that now, or did you want to do a little intro?
Yeah, sorry, go right ahead. Yes.
Okay, so as we mentioned, the first Quad-Mech was the Xanthos by Hollis Industries in 2564. This would be quickly followed by the Scorpion and Goliath by Brigadier Industries. All of Quad-Mechs, but especially the Xanthos, were known for having a rough ride, and this was only compounded more by pilots who were never explicitly trained on Quad-Mechs. They were trained for bipedal mechs, and so the skills needed were not inherent in that training regimen. And so they had a very big stigma.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they had a very big stigma attached to them due to this, and essentially you didn't really get any more designs past those three for a while, and a large portion of the production would fade away during the Secession Wars, with the Goliath and Scorpion being kept around, with the Xanthos just completely disappearing until the Jihad. However, in the 3060s, you see a new renaissance of Quad-Mechs, with the Sirocco, Tarantula, and a couple others being introduced in relatively rapid succession with the introduction of the memory cores, namely the Grouse, Helm, and New Dallas cores, which essentially gave the information and technology back to the Inner Sphere to be able to produce new Quad-Mech designs to the specifications of the earlier Scorpion and Goliath designs. And of course, at this point, the stigma against them had faded, and production had started ramping up for the existing designs, but you didn't have any new ones until the 3060s.
Yeah, I think what really makes the Quad-Mech shine is when it gets out of the assault range, because the movement, or the difference in its ability to move, is quite interesting, but when you have such limited ability to move, it doesn't really shine.
Yeah, especially for lighter Quad-Mechs, the ability for it to crab sideways to get around obstacles instead of having to do a full turn, move one, then turn again, gives them a lot more speed on a tabletop. And then I'm assuming in, Fluff, they have a very similar way where they can kind of just spring around obstacles instead of having to, do an S curve essentially around them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after the 3060s, pretty much every faction ends up with Quad-Mechs. I mean, even the clans have produced their own, with the Stalking Spider and the Fire Scorpion being two major designs, along with a couple of Omni-Mechs. And then also the Quad-V design would spring off of the Quad-Mech tree, I guess.
Yeah.
Tech tree.
Or is this more of a branch from Battlemechs? The Battlemech tree, the Quad-Mech branch, you get a little mini branch with the Quad-Vs, with the Hell's Horses. And then it's not explicitly stated, but I would assume tripod mechs, since they came out after, with the Hedgehog first, and then eventually the Super Heavies of the Republic of the Sphere, took some technological know-how from the Quad-Mechs. Although they are so radically different, there's not much. What was that, Josh?
I got it. It's the Hedgehog.
Yes, it's some Star League era tripod mech. We don't know much about it other than it existed. It's popped up, I think, in like 3 canonical sources, namely one of the recognition guides. So maybe we'll see it again, but I mean, who knows? Hopefully, yes. I like the idea of a light tripod. Hilarious.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Are you sure the Hedgehog is the first tripod mech?
It's not the first one to be released in our universe, but in Battletech, it's the first one because that's back all the way with the SLDF.
Okay, because I thought there was a mining one that was released that's what the Poseidon was actually based off of.
I mean, that's also possible. I hadn't seen anything about the Poseidon being based off of any other mech, but it's always possible.
I mean, all humans crib notes from somewhere, right?
Yeah, I was always under the impression that the Poseidon sprung off of the Orca from the whatever that was. Not Republic of the Sphere.
Rimworld's Republic.
Was it Jihad or Republic?
The Orca.
The Orca was Project Omega in the 3090s.
Right, which was an April Fool's joke, but then it was canonized.
Yeah, and so the Poseidon takes a lot of cues from that, but we're getting way off topic with that being a tripod. But
so for the Quad-Mechs, they have some interesting rule sets, and the cool one I think that is super neat is the movement. If you can move laterally, either forward or backwards. If you move backwards, of course, that is a backup action, and moving forward, you can either run or walk. So if you were looking at a hex grid, you could run or walk to the one forward and to the right or left, and in order to do that, you would just add one additional movement point to whatever you would need to enter that hex, and you would keep the same facing, which is really cool.
yeah, which is very helpful for moving through certain terrains.
So instead of turning one, moving one, turning one back, you're just spending 2, so you're saving yourself a movement point?
Yeah, so instead of the 2 turns, you are using the movement point to laterally move, basically, just 1.
And then there's also a pilot skill, pilot special abilities, that you can just make it free, where it's just a normal move to laterally move, which is crazy, because then all of a sudden this thing can jump around buildings and just, book it. And speaking of jumping around buildings in urban environments, with the way Quad-Mechs are, they have a -2 to pilot skill rolls for like falling and everything. So like, let's say you're sprinting in a city on pavement. Normally, you have to take a pilot skill roll, and there's a potential, you completely mess up and, skid into a building and blow yourself up. With a Quad-Mech, it's almost impossible unless you're a really bad pilot.
Unless you make a horrible, horrible mistake.
Yes. However, something I forgot to note, the lateral movement and as well as the PSR, that only is in effect as long as you have 4 operational legs. As soon as you lose a leg, you lose those bonuses.
Yes, this is true. The other thing is that unless it has the design quirk of extended torso twist, you can't twist any of the Quad-Mechs to change their firing arc. So that is a little tricky and something you have to work around sometimes.
Definitely a nerf.
Really makes you want turrets.
Yes, which they do exist. Quad-Mech turrets, they're a thing.
They should be standard on all mechs, on all Quad-Mechs, along with a gunner to be in them.
They're pretty easy to put on. They weigh a certain percentage of whatever's mounted in them. So like for a 12-ton weapon, it's like 1.5 tons or something, or 2 tons.
And as time goes on and we see the designs evolve, we start to see basically having the entire mech mounted on a little pedestal that has the 4 legs, so it has that torso twist, which is cool and obviously a good design, because I feel the early designs really look like weapons platforms or mobile turrets, and they, while good, while effective, they don't really feel like a battle mech.
Yeah. And then speaking of quirks, another good quirk that they can have, which the Barghest, which is another relatively popular Quad-Mech, has, is directional. I think that's called a directional torso mount, where you can twist your weapons in your left or right torso, essentially, but you do it during your movement phase.
Interesting.
And then, of course, if there's a chance it can get wedged in that position. So it's good and bad. But you can also jam your turrets, so, give and takes. Another interesting fact about Quad-Mechs, what was that, Josh?
I was going to say, I've decided if I'm going to play crazy mech designer, I'm going to take the tripods and the quads and merge them together. Because reading up on tripods, they generally have at least 2 crew members. So you got a pilot and a gunner, which is good. You're
Yeah.
sharing the workload. And then the torso is mounted up high enough to where it can spin 360. So now it's a turret, but I don't like the tripod legs. That seems like a really ungainly method of movement. So
you want to make a quad super heavy?
not even a quad super, because there's the triskelion is a tripod heavy. I'm just saying, like, the upper torso should be able to spin free the way a tripod does on a quad. And you need another crew member. I'm gonna make a hexapod walkers.
And then you could also get hands. It can throw hams then. Speaking of hams, I mean, as the name says, Quad-Mechs have 4 legs, and so what would be the arms on a Battlemech are actually legs now, which means any hits to those are counted as leg hits, technically. So let's say you're you're in like partial cover, so you're behind a level 1 hill, and someone shoots at you and hits your arm, what your arms are, in air quotes, so your front legs. Those count as leg hits, so they don't hit, which is nice. And then Quad-Mechs also get a bunch of bonuses to pull down positioning, which is nice. Another downside to being a Quad-Mech is you have less critical slots, which is something I didn't notice until I was building a random Quad-Mech one day, and I was like, wait a second.
If the Quad-Mech loses its right or left torso, the corresponding front leg is blown off immediately, and then the rear leg is unaffected.
So essentially just operates like an R at that point. Quad-Mechs, they have less critical slots, so a normal Battlemech has 78 critical slots. Quad-Mechs have 66, so they have a full 12 slots less, and that is the ones that are lost from not having functional arms like a normal Battlemech does, which is sad. Makes me sad. I want those extra 12 slots, CGL. Give them to me, please.
I mean, you could get Pharaoh for just that.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't even have to change any of the designs. Just give them an extra 12 slots. It doesn't affect your tonnage at all.
Technically, Pharaoh's 14 slots.
Oh, am I thinking of Clan? Is Clan 11?
Clan is 7. Same with Light Pharaoh.
Maybe I'm just thinking of HBS.
Are you thinking Endosteel? I don't even know how many it takes in HBS.
No, Endosteel is also 14.
Anywho.
Yeah, but another upside to Quad-Mechs is they can actually carry more armor than a normal mech. They have roughly 5% more armor point capacity than a normal mech of its tonnage, which is nice. So like the Xanthos, where we were saying it has full armor capacity, it's taking advantage of every little bit of armor capacity it can. So that extra 5% is in use, which is nice.
Definitely gives it some staying power.
That is actually really, really sweet.
So like the Grand Turtle, where we're saying that thing's hard to kill, it's because it has 323 points of hardened armor, which is 646 points of armor, which is you literally cannot get more armor than that. Like you'd have to get a bigger. I don't even think super heavy's gonna have that much armor unless they have hardened, but I don't even know that. I don't think there is any with hardened armor. So, but yeah, that's Quad-Mechs. I want one. Give me one with an Ultra 20.
So the Quad-Mechs, with how they move and how they have the restricted torso twist, I think they are really cool and neat, but I think they are like the Riflemen in that they are a very specific tool, and I think they need to be in either a large military operation or unit, or screened quite well by a combined arms unit to properly support it, because Quad-Mechs, especially when we're talking about the slower ones, really feel like they can get overwhelmed quite easily by themselves.
Yeah, especially if you're going against something that's more maneuverable, because you can't use that torso twist to make up for not being able to turn completely towards them or something. Whereas if, like, let's say it's a 100-ton mech trying to smack down a light mech, you can almost always get a torso twist to get something on him. Yeah. Whereas with a quad mech, you can't, unless of course you have a turret, and then the turret is like, I have 360 degrees of firing arc, so prepare to die.
We see that actual scenario play out in the Fourth Succession War with that Goliath unit I was talking about, because the Fed sons, they basically just run up to him and run circles around him, and there's nothing the Goliaths can do to get away, to save themselves.
Yeah, they just get overwhelmed.
I remember the fact that the commander got taken out by that death from above made them break and run, but it's been a while since I've read that book.
Yeah, I remember them getting orders to just run up in there and get him, and then that was what caused the commander to get killed.
I mean, crossing blades with whatever his name is never a good idea. Not Morgan, one of the Allard
Patrick?
kids, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Patrick. Patrick's with the
No,
Kells.
no.
Morgan's also a Kel.
Not Cranston.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be with the Fed.
It was the one who was sent to escort Melissa back to the Fed Sons. It wasn't an Allard. It was Justin's second in command of the training unit, who was promoted to command of the training unit when Justin was
Redburn.
Yeah, Redburn.
Oh, of course it's right.
The other Justin.
How could you forget Redburn?
Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, Primitives Volume 4, TRO 3075, Record Sheets 3075, Age of War Unabridged, and Record Sheets 3145, New Tech, New Upgrades.
I used Record Sheets 3060, Battletech Tech Manual, the Battletech Tactical Operations, and Battletech Battlemech Manual, along with probably a bunch of other sources that I didn't realize I used.
We'll just file that under the big brain, right?
Yep.
Big brain, best brain.
Look at the big brain on Brad.
This podcast is made possible by our supporters on patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs, link in the description. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a community Discord, the Armory of Ouroboros, link in the description. You can email us at ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your platform of consumption, tell your friends about us, and share on your community platform of choice. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, Mech Warriors.
Stay safe out there.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
My boy.
Why you do this?
Look how you massacred my boy.
You shouldn't have done that. He's just a boy.
They massacred your boy.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family. These all
Hello,
are compact engines. Sorry.
Well, that's the stinger for the episode.
Perfect timing.